Hi, Amy here again, ready to deliver some more history. Today I have decided to adapt a uni essay, so you know I've really done my research on this one. Now, I like to think of madness as a spectrum. There are all different categories. You have silliness, you have stupidity, you have insanity, you have America, and then you have Russia. Just Russia. Are you okay? Seriously, people say Australia is crazy. We are sane compared to Russia. No matter what period of history you look at it, Russia is just a whole different category of madness. Honestly, I'm all for the insanity. That's one of my favorite parts of history. And Russia has crazy history by the bucket load. It's almost like a train wreck that you can't stop looking at, that has been going on for 1,200 years. Today, we are just looking at one small but very significant part of Russian history. A story of a small principality that somehow beat all odds to rise to power and basically form what would become modern Russia. So yeah, these people are who you can blame for Russia. So grab some vodka. Believe me, you will need it. Here is the story of Muscovy. Thanks again to Canon for filming and editing. Okay, so background time. So around the 9th century, the lands which would become Russia and Ukraine were being invaded by Norse settlers. The most important of these was a man named Rurikid. All of our major characters today are descended from him. He and his descendants started the formation of the Kievan Rus, which were the states which populated modern-day Russia and Ukraine. Their original seat of power was in Kiev, but then it got moved further north to the Grand Principality of Vladimir. We will be mostly focused on the northeastern principalities, which I think make modern-day Russia. So, 13th century comes around, and up come the Mongols doing their invasion thing. Yeah, Russia is in a weird spot where they are part of both European and Asian history. Anyway, Mongols invade, take over Kievan Rus, and the many descendants of Rurik, the Viking guy, also known as the Rurikid dynasty, are still allowed to rule their principalities, but they basically now answer to the Khan of the Golden Horde, the local branch of the Mongol Empire. Now we can really get into the good stuff. So, in early 14th century Rus, Muscovy/Moscow was just one of many principalities. They wanted what all principalities wanted: dominance. The most powerful title among the Rus principalities was the Grand Prince of Vladimir. Now, Rus had some pretty strange laws of succession. I suspect you are all familiar with primogeniture, in which the monarch's eldest child, Reed's son, inherits the title. Well, the Rus did things a bit differently. Instead of going vertically like normal people, they went laterally. This meant that the eldest member, Reed man of the dynasty, got the title. So it would pass from brother to brother and then cousin to cousin, and it's just confusing. It's kind of like if you have a large family who share a crock pot, only instead of playing past the crock pot, it's past the Grand Principality. But I guess it worked out. Each branch of the dynasty got to rule their own little principality. The title of Grand Prince got passed around between the branches. Everyone was happy, except for the Muscovite princes. See, the patriarch of the Muscovite princes Daniel did not serve as Grand Prince. This, in theory, would disqualify the Muscovites from inheriting the Grand Principality. Daniel's sons, Yuri and Ivan, looked at the situation and said laws of succession were meant to be broken. So, first things first, sources of legitimacy. They needed an alternative way of gaining legitimacy for the Grand Principality. Traditional laws were out, so what now? Wait, what are the Mongols doing? The Khans of the Golden Horde decided to set up a system in which the princes of Rus had to give them tribute so they could gain and maintain patents for their thrones. This was true even for the Grand Principality. Yuri and Ivan saw this situation and took full advantage of it. In 1318, Yuri managed to steal the Grand Princely title from the rightful holder, and after about a decade of conflict, Ivan officially got the Grand Principality in 1327. The title, with one exception, remained in the hands of the Muscovites. They did this by frequently visiting the Khans and giving tribute payments. Happy Khan equals continued holding of Grand Principality, which meant happy Muscovites. Ivan I literally got given the name Kalita, which, I kid you not, means money bags. This guy loved visiting the Khans and he knew how to keep them happy. Ivan I's descendants would continue this tradition. There were, however, some hiccups. In 1359, Dmitry, the son of Ivan II, did not originally get the Grand Principality. This may have been due to unsatisfactory tribute, the fact that the Golden Horde were having some trouble with leadership, or the fact he was 9 years old. But he got it back shortly after. However, his troubles did not end there. You see, Dmitry experienced some issues with bandits, which meant less tribute. A very powerful leader in the Golden Horde, Mamai, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce words, was not satisfied with the lack of tribute. In 1380, Mamai attacked Dmitry. However, Dmitry managed to muster enough strength to defeat the Mongols at the Battle of Kolikovo. This may make it seem like the Muscovites no longer needed the Mongols, but only a couple years later, Dmitry was defeated by the Mongol leader Toktemish. This shows that the Golden Horde was still strong. However, the Muscovites were in the ascendant. Only a few decades and grand princes later, Vasily II, the grandson of Dmitry Ivanovich, was able to pass the Grand Principality on without a patent. Keep in mind that the Golden Horde was shattering. But in any case, during the 14th century, the Muscovite princes saw the situation and took full advantage of it. And this is only the beginning of their political moves. At this time, northeastern Rus were divided into many principalities. Just because you were a grand prince, it did not instantly mean everyone was happy to follow your lead. Quite the opposite, actually. Everyone was fighting for the biggest throne in town. The Muscovite grand princes especially faced conflict with other princes, mostly because their main source of legitimacy was the Khans. Right from the beginning, Yuri and Ivan I had to fight with the rightful grand prince, Mikhail of Tver. For just over a decade, the Danubik brothers and Mikhail and sons fought for the Grand Principality until Ivan I became sole Grand Prince of both Vladimir and Novgorod in 1331. Speaking of Novgorod, this particular state was very important for the Muscovites. Novgorod was an important center of trade and were rather unique in that they chose their princes. The Muscovites took advantage of both these things. After taking over Novgorod, they used the resources provided by this extremely important center of trade to gain the tribute needed for the Khans. Ivan I was particularly known for these frequent tributes. There were issues with Novgorod going forward. In the 1360s and 70s, Dmitry Donskoy experienced issues with bandits who were based in Novgorod, which led to him not having enough funds for tributes, which led to the Mame thing. And Novgorod didn't even have the decency to provide military support during the Battle of Kolikovo. Anyway, while the Danielrik brothers may have had Tver to deal with, the rivalries did not end there. You know how I mentioned before that the Muscovite Grand Princes only lost the Grand Principality once? Well, in 1359, when 9-year-old Dmitry Ivanovich went to get the patent, he lost it to Dmitry of Suzdal. This sparked a rivalry between the two Dmitries. Just imagine for one moment going into a tavern in 14th century Russia and having this conversation. Oh, hi! So, who are you supporting? I'm supporting Dmitry. How about you? I'm supporting Dmitry. Which one? I'm not telling. That joke is courtesy of Callan. We make a lot of Russian jokes. Anyway.
Kremlin, please don't come after us.
Yes. Do not tell Kremlin. Anyway, this conflict eventually ended in 1366 when Dmitry Ivanovich married the daughter of Dmitry of Suzdal. And the poor kids of this union were stuck with a dad and a granddad with the same name. I would also probably make a joke about this girl having a husband with the same name as her father, but I'm trying to keep my channel as clean as possible while I talk about war and murder and Russia. So, while this was happening, Dmitry was also diminishing the power of all of the other Dmitry's supporters. Confused about which one? Remember who the main characters of this story are. Jumping forward to the 1440s, Vasily II was able to come to an agreement with the Prince of Suzdal. Basically, Suzdal had to surrender any existing and any future patents to the Grand Princes of Moscow. In only 80 years, Suzdal went from almost ruining the Muscovites' carefully laid plans to being subservient to them. Like it or not, the Muscovite Grand Princes knew their way around the political stage, and when politics didn't work, they could always just use good old-fashioned military force. The Muscovite Grand Princes weren't just good with politics, they knew how to use martial strength. Originally, they relied heavily on family members, other princes, and the Mongols for military strength. Dmitry of Suzdal, for example, was of great help to his son-in-law Dmitry in the military campaign against Mame in 1380 and yet another Mikhail of Tver in the 1370s. Skip forward 100 years and Ivan III decides to change the things. He was mainly focused on annexing important principalities, such as that pesky Novgorod. He would also snatch up lands previously held by his brothers, who kept dying mysteriously for some reason, leaving their lands to Ivan, even though traditionally the land should have been divided among all surviving men in the immediate family. Wait, is someone taking notes in the background? Another achievement of Ivan III and later his son Vasily III was the decrease in how much the Muscovites relied on others for martial support. This was done through military land grants. Ivan III would take recently taken land, mostly from Novgorod, and give it to his army. He built a martial force who answered only to the Muscovite grand princes. Got to admit, it's kind of impressive how over about a century and a half, the Muscovite grand princes were able to grow their political and martial power. In the time of Vasily II, he literally had coins calling himself the ruler of all Rus. Ivan III and Vasily III basically made this a reality. But while they had to deal with external threats, the Muscovites also had to handle internal threats. So, I previously mentioned Rus's weird laws of succession, which basically resulted in the Grand Principality being passed around like the family crockpot. Another strange thing is that land would get divided among the relatives, just to make things even more fun. And by fun, I mean confusing. One advantage of the Muscovites is that they remained rather small. Semyon, the eldest son of Ivan Kalita and elder brother of Ivan II, died of the Black Death along with his sons and one of his brothers. For about a century, the Muscovites were able to follow the laws of lateral succession while accidentally also practicing vertical succession. This wasn't a problem until Vasily I just had to die with 4 surviving brothers and a son, my personal favorite, Vasily II. Adding to the mess, Vasily I had the brilliant idea of leaving the Grand Principality to his son in his will. This led to a civil war in the 1430s and 1440s between Vasily II and his uncle, the heir according to lateral succession, Yuri. The civil war was then continued by Vasily's cousins, Vasily, yes, another Vasily, and Dmitri. It happened again! Returning to the tavern. Oh, hi! Who are you supporting? I'm supporting Vasily. What about you? I'm supporting Vasily. Which one? I'm not telling. Vasily was exiled and blinded by his cousins, and yet he still came back and took back his throne. With the victory of Vasily II, he established vertical succession. He also seemingly learnt from the civil war and began the process of decreasing the power of his family members, a tradition followed by his successors Ivan III and Vasily III. In the long term, the civil war was actually good for Moscow. You know what wasn't good? The Golden Horde falling apart. By the 15th century, the Golden Horde was falling apart like some cheesy boy bands. This meant the Muscovites needed a new source of legitimacy, and they found this in God. I am not joking. Kievan Rus used to cover all of modern-day Russia and Ukraine. Sorry, I'm not the best at geography. Anyway, after the Mongols did their conquering, more attention was paid to the northeastern principalities, and the southwestern kind of fell out of focus. I mean, the capital of Kievan Rus had already long since moved to Vladimir up north, but you get the idea. The southwest was falling under the influence of Lithuania, and what was Kievan Rus was breaking apart. The Metropolitan, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, did not want this. At the same time, the Muscovites were playing the Game of Thrones. The Metropolitans were focused on trying to unite the ecclesiastical realm. They eventually decided the best way to do this was to work with the rising power of the time, Muscovy. Together, the Metropolitans and the Muscovites formed quite the threatening team. Keprian, the Metropolitan in the late 14th and early 15th centuries, made this thing called the Trinity Chronicle. It basically promoted the idea of a united ecclesiastical realm, with Moscow in the center of it. The Trinity Chronicle also portrayed Muscovy as the successor of Kiev and Vladimir. Hello, new source of legitimacy. But things really came to a head in the mid-15th century during the time of my man Vasily II. The Russian metropolitans at the time had to be confirmed by the Patriarch of Constantinople. But in 1436, the Patriarch's decisions were more based on political problems rather than church. At this time, the Eastern Orthodox Church was in negotiations with the Western Catholic Church, hoping for some unification, mostly because Constantinople was facing some threats from the Ottoman Empire and they were desperate for help. So the Patriarch gave Russia someone who was sure to support the unification. This guy called Isidore. No, not the one from Lord of the Rings. Unfortunately for the Patriarch's plans, while Isidore supported the unification, the Russians didn't support Isidore or the idea of unifying with those damn Catholics. They probably didn't want the cardboard. So in the 1440s, Vasily and the rest of the Russians kicked out Isidore and declared their own metropolitan, Iona. With this, they officially declared independence from the Greek Orthodox Church. Their decision was further legitimized when Constantinople fell to the Ottomans in 1453. The Russians were probably thinking something like, "See, told you that uniting with the Catholics was heretical. Now God's mad at you." And then Iona and Vasily got really busy. With the fall of Constantinople, the Metropolitan decided that Moscow was the new center of the Orthodox Church. As such, the Muscovite Grand Princes were the protectors of the true faith. The Muscovites asked for legitimacy and they got it. Nothing says legitimate rulers of all of Rus like being chosen by God himself. In short, the Metropolitan and the Grand Prince made the ultimate power couple, even better than the Grand Prince and the Khan. So, what have we learned from this? The Muscovites were adaptable, clever, resourceful, determined. Seriously, they clearly knew how to play the Game of Thrones. In 2 centuries, they went from being a small, insignificant principality to being the rulers of what would become Russia. They basically made modern Russia. They're good at taking bad situations and turning them to their advantage. After the Golden Horde took over and the Kievan Rus was shattered, the Muscovites took advantage of the Mongols' power over the principalities. In the aftermath of the Muscovite Civil War, Vasily II took the chance to diminish the strength of his troublesome relatives and centralize the power of the Grand Prince. The Grand Princes of Muscovy used political and martial maneuvering to deal with their rivals. When they lost their main source of legitimacy, the Muscovites didn't give up. They found a new and improved source. Say what you will about the madness that is Russia, but those Muscovites were really determined, and it is through their determination, their strength, their skill with handling the Khans, the other principalities, their relatives, and the church, which led to them becoming the rulers of all Rus. It is thanks to these grand princes that Ivan IV was able to be declared the first Tsar of Russia. And then Ivan IV almost ruined it all. But that is a story for another time. All I have to say now is, oh, the Russians.
Besides, you're saying it wrong. It's
Kan ik komen, kan ik komen.